Worked out. Our next speaker is Peter Gietz. Peter is the CEO of DASI International. He has been doing this for a few years now. Previously, he has had a long and varied history in the academic community, generally being recognized as an international expert on directories and very much involved in probably every directory activity going on the planet. Something along those lines. Peter is involved in a project now regarding a registry for directory schema, and that's what we're going to hear about today. Peter.
You have to show me how to put this on.
Yeah. And do you want questions? Yeah. And feel free to ask questions as he gives his talk.
So, can you understand me? No.
Canadian.
Canadian. This doesn't look nice, but it works. Okay. So, yeah, there's a problem with my presentation. Yeah, no problem.
So are there any questions for Peter?
No. Anyway, I can start thanking you for this very nice introduction and for the invitation to talk in this wonderful conference, in this wonderful city. And as Michael already said, I will be talking about the Directory Schema Registry project, which is a combined project of Tirrena and 5 European national research networks, and my company, which is performing it. And I can see my slides. Yeah. Yeah. So, and just don't blame them. It was my fault because I delivered it so late. Yeah. Okay. So I want to be talking about the motivation of this project, about the project plan and who's funding it, and so on. Part of the project was to make a survey of work that has already been done on registries in a more general scope. So this was quite, I think, 70 pages document talking about other approaches of registries, going also into the domain of XML and stuff. And then the same document also talks about the existing schema that should be in such a registry. Then there's another document about the policy, how to get schema into the registry, what process there will be. Then we did some work about the metadata for the registry. A bit on software design, a bit on implementation progress, and a last slide on the business models. Well, I can't see my presentation here, so I will have to look back, which is not... would it be possible to have it here as well? That would be wonderful. Okay, the motivation. A common schema... would have worked on my notebook. Huh? No. Yeah, wonderful. Oh no, I was on my first slide. So a common schema is just vital for directory interoperability. So we have lots of possibilities to put any kind of data in directories, but if you want to have a client X doing retrieval on a server Y, they do have to know about the schema, and so they have to know common schema. and it is thus very vital for interoperability. There are lots of standards already out there. So the IETF has lots of LDAP schema standards, and other standardization organizations have them as well. I'll have another slide on that. But some people may not know about them, and then they tend to just reinvent the wheel. As an example, we don't have such schema yet, or I don't know about it, but imagine there would be somebody developing schema for metadata on cars, and if you don't know that, you will just do your own metadata on cars, and then applications would not interoperate. Apart from those schemas that are already standardized, there are lots of schemas out there that are not standardized, but still very good to use. You can find information about schema on the web, but on very different locations, there's no single point of access for LDAP schema. And if you can find them on the web, the humans can see about it, but there's no possibility for applications to retrieve schema via LDAP. And that was, all these were the reasons to do such a schema registry. So the project aims were to set up an LDAP schema registry with an easy, browsable, and searchable web interface, an LDAP interface for retrieval so that applications can make use of it, and an interface based on MIME types, which are defined in RFC 2927. That is the only RFC that was published from an IETF working group called Schema. All the other work was about a schema listing service, it was called, which is sort of a registry. And this work of the Schema group heavily influenced our work here. The other aims were to define a policy for inclusion of new schema into the registry, to search for existing schema definitions and include them into the registry, and last but not least, to develop a business model to keep the registry alive after the end of the project. And the last 2 points are a bit contradictory. So we first put schema inside, and then we think about how to finance that. But I'll have so this is the project funding body. As I said, Terena is the major funder. It funds 50% of the whole project, and the four national research networks fund the other 50%. And all in all, I made calculations that a third, that these two funding bodies fund 2/3, and 1/3 is just on our shoulders. We just want to have such a thing happening. So if you go to the website, and now I have to admit I don't think I have the URL on my slides, but I'll give them to you at the end. On this website, you will find the project proposal and the deliverables that are already there, which is a survey of previous work on directory schema registry, related technologies, and existing LDAP schema, and a bibliography which is for the whole documentation of the project. Then the policy usage and incorporation policy is a single document, and a document on the metadata formats used in the registry. Software specs is another deliverable. Then, of course, the implementation, and last but not least, the business plan, which is missing here right now, which is not existent yet. What is out there already? That was the first aim of the project, to see what has been done. And there is a mechanism to store schema in LDAP and X500 servers. And the problem there is that it is that they are defined as operational attributes. Thus, they won't be searchable by normal searching user clients. RFC 1804 has a different approach how to put schema into a directory, which is quite an interesting approach, having the single schema elements like attribute type, object class, LDAP syntax, and so on in single entries. And actually, we followed this approach, but not 100% as listed in this RFC, but the general approach was the one we used. In fact, it's a combination of the two points, because we also have the schema just as in those operational attributes I just mentioned, but they are just defined as user attributes, so they can be searchable. You have IANA procedures for registering LDAP elements. There's an RFC 3383, I think it is, where you can just register the names and the OIDs of LDAP schema elements. And then there's the proposal of the schema working group I was talking about already. You already have a very nice website where you can retrieve LDAP schema, which is called LDAP Schema Viewer. You have the URL of that. So this is sort of the standard. We want to have our web interface modeled after. We will also include links to this site because it is very nicely done and good work, and so we don't want to replace that work. Novell has an own schema registry, which is only an OID registry, actually, so the name is not really right. Novell users can go there and pay some money and get an OID for their own defined schema. We have proper OID registries, one from Harald Alvestrand sitting here, and another one from ASN1 organization in France. Both have their merits, and so the idea of our registry is to put pointer to both of these entries of the OIDs in our own OID tree. Then we have XML registries at xml.org, and there are some more on metadata registries and RDFS. If you're interested, they are all listed in this first document. So this is the IETF working group schema, which provided specifications for a schema listing service for the directory technologies LDAP, whois, and rwhois. Nowadays, I think the LDAP part is the most interesting one. The idea was to provide a single point of discovery to promote reuse, reduce duplication of effort, and to promote interoperability. Exactly the aims we had. The problem was if that group would have succeeded and would have written RFCs, and there were several ideas of companies and organizations to run such a registry or listing service, as they called it, but it just didn't happen for years. And so we thought now the time is up. Now we should make a new effort to get such a thing in reality. Okay, that work is totally based on MIME content type for directory information, which is RFC 2425. So these are the documents that never made it to RFCs, but as I said, our work is heavily grounded on that work. And I talked to Chris Apple and to some other guys that were involved in that IETF working group, and we do plan to have a BOF maybe in Vienna at the next IETF to get the IETF effort rolling again. And that might be based on the work we did, but of course that will be an open IETF process to maybe change some things. Have experts around that tell us how we could have made it better. So existing LDAP schema, I think I have to be a bit faster. You have schema defined in X500. You have 27 RFCs. We found at least 27 RFCs at the IETF. with LDAP schema. You have other standardization organizations like the DMTF that have an LDAP schema for their common information model. The Open Group has a schema for DCE. Internet 2, of course, we will hear about that, has the EduPerson and EduOrg. There are proprietary schemas from Novell, Netscape, Sun, and Microsoft. Schemas from research projects. The GRID people at least had relied a lot on LDAP in the Globus toolkits 1 and 2 were heavily built on LDAP, and so they needed LDAP schema for computers, resources, and so on. This may change. They are going into the XML web services direction, but still there's valuable schema in LDAP that should be dealt with in the registry. And there are a number of open source projects that also have interesting working schema. One example is Laser for email stuff. Most of them had been an internet draft, but never came to RFC status, but still are used in lots of implementations. So, about the policy. This is the policy that was thought of in the schema working group. So a schema writer makes a schema listing request, and this goes to an email list that reviews this request, and it has to be discussed. Well, it's a call of 2 weeks, and if there are significant objections, it goes back to the schema writer, and he has to go back to the drawing board. If there are no objections, there will be a proper schema listing request. The difference between those two is that here some additional data that are given from the listing service operator, namely an OID for each listing and so on. And if that meets all requirements, it can be put into the registry. If not, again, back to the drawing board. And they were already thinking of a replicated registry. So you have a mirroring agent and a primary repository and some replicas. So in our policy document, we formulated policy for all these items: establishment of an open list for discussion, specification of a moderator who interacts with a DSR operator, specification of the policy board who is in charge of the policy, so who may make changes to these proposals done in this document. Specifications of the syntactical requirements, for schema submission, formats, encoding, naming, and the process for checking syntax and OIDs. There are some things that are new that hadn't been done in the schema working group, so I didn't only copy their work, but enhanced it a bit. For instance, this syntax checking and so on, that you can do that automatically. Semantic requirements, what kind of metadata should be added, and there again there's a difference. The schema working group just had requirements of metadata on the actual schema listing. We also want to have a proper document that has some more language inside to describe what the schema is for. There's a version control for the schema. The registration process must be specified. A comment mechanism, so people can comment and say, for instance, this schema is useful for application X, but I tried it with something else and it wasn't useful at all, which is interesting information for the users, of course. An update process has to be specified, and the actions and responsibilities of the actual operator of the registry. So the policy board finalizes the decision about the processes, controls the whole process, appoints experts for review, reassigns responsibilities for a schema, moderates the discussion list, decides about schema inclusion and classification of its status. And the operator provides all the technical infrastructure, hardware, LDAP server, sorry for the typo, web gateway and mailing list, and it provides the the OID and additional numbers for uniquely identifying the schema. It is in charge of performing the schema checks, syntax checks, and so on, if everything is okay. And forwards the registration request to the mailing list and then puts it from the mailing list. I think I have a workflow, but it's on the latest slide. Yeah, and it acts sort of as a communication mediator between the different interest groups. Chris?
That the working group fell apart because the whole procedure is too complex to register the schema?
No, and well, that group was. This is even more complex than that group was. No, it was all about politics. First, there was a company that wanted to do it, but the community didn't want that company to do it, actually, because it was a rather big one and with quite some influence. And the second approach was that the open group tried to get funding to get that going, and they just didn't get funding, and so they but they said, oh, we are going to do it, and they said it for 2 or 3 years. I mean, those drafts are from 1998, so it was a long time, but it's definitely not because of the complexity, and at the end everything is quite easy to do. This is just the legal stuff to have it really properly, but this is only for the people involved, but not for the schema writers. They have just a simple MIME template where they can just fill in the data. So it's not about the complexity.
Oh.
So what kind of information will be stored? Metadata on specification documents. So this is bibliographical data. And this is a new part. It's not about the actual schema listing, but about the document that describes the schema. And I'll come to that. Then LDAP compliant definitions of the schema elements, so that LDAP applications can just retrieve it in the way it was defined in the X500. Single parts of the schema element have to be defined. For instance, the must attributes of an object class, the may attributes of an object class, and so on. The metadata as specified in the schema working group, we took them quite one-to-one. Slight changes. If you read the document, you can see the changes. We have a separate OID tree to, for instance, include the information about the OID registries I mentioned before, and some additional metadata. So metadata for bibliographical references, there we use the Dublin Core metadata model, which is used in digital libraries throughout. And there had been an internet draft on how to map Dublin Core metadata in LDAP, but this was very premature work, and we did work on that, and there will be an internet draft about Dublin Core metadata, which is sort of a side product of this project. Then the metadata specified in the schema working group, and additional schema for the registry, which is the things defined in RFC 2927, and additional things for the OID tree, and some schema for the nodes. You can see that on.
Sorry, Pete.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something? The OID tree, is that a part of the global bit? The OID tree.
Yes, I'll have
Will
a slide on that,
it?
which will make it clear.
Okay, thank
Yeah?
you.
No? Okay, so here are the definitions. I don't think I will have enough time, 5 minutes, yeah, to really go through them. These are just examples. So this is the Dublin Core container object with all those Dublin Core elements. Then this one is an example for which kinds of things we're going to use for the person. So we have Dublin Core says DC creator and has a fuzzy qualifier mechanism which is wrongly used to put additional data about the person, namely organization, address, and so on. We decided to have a pointer to a single entry, and this entry will be modeled with this object class, which is INET.org, some attributes from INET.org person plus the country attribute that comes from the DC person object class. These are the metadata for the schema working group. These are the metadata for the RFC 2927, which introduces a new thing called LDAP schemas for the whole thing, which has interesting fields like imports, because some schemas import schemas from other things. For instance, INET.org person imports from the standard person and organizational person stuff, and edu person imports from INET.org person, and so on. Okay, if you find time, just have a closer look at these slides. I'm sorry, it's not enough time to really go through them. This is how we model the single elements. So you have, for instance, in an attribute definition, you have a pointer to a syntax, and that is modeled like that. And I think it's too much to go through this in detail. Just have a look at the slide. So additional metadata is just some fields where we can store whether the syntax is okay, the OID was checked, and additional listing comments. So there are two kinds of comments: an official one, which was already thought of in the schema working group, and this is this listing informal comment is more for the internet community to give additional hints on usage and so on. Okay. So this is the DIT, how we are going to structure it, and this may answer your question. We have an LDAP registry where we have the different schemas. Every schema has, as the schema working group defined, a contact person and an authority who is allowed to change that contact person. These are just person entries. But we have an own object class for them because they have very peculiar definitions. So we couldn't use multi-value attributes for email address and so on because it had to be one email address. That's why we have known object class here. Then we have single documents and versions of the schema. And these documents have authors, and the single elements, schema elements, are below this entry. Yeah. So and that's the OID part where we have OID components. Every number is a component, and then you have pointers from here to here, and pointers from here to the OID registries out there in the world. So this is the workflow, the software design. We have an OpenLDAP server, which for the pending entries, which is not published. The MIME interface, people can feed it inside. When a new schema comes in this pending server, there will be a mail to the mailing list, 2 weeks time to comment upon it. And if they decide that that schema is okay, the operator will just put that schema in the public registry, and an LDAP client can directly talk LDAP to the registry, and there will be there is a web gateway where web browsers can connect to and find information for the humans.
Peter, 1 minute.
Yeah, this is my last slide. After the project, we need some kind of money to have this running, and we just thought we now are setting it up and see what happens, how much interest it finds. And there are several possibilities. Either organizations pay for registering their own schemas, which would be a fair solution. Users could pay for retrieving the schema, but this is always the no thing to do, because if the users would have to pay, they're not used to pay, and then it wouldn't be used, and then it would be useless after all. The best solution would be that there would be one or two organizations that just sponsor it. Us being a very small company, I think we could do that quite cheap, so it is not a matter of hundreds of thousands to get this operating. And until we have found a solution, we will just run it. So, thank you very much for your attention. That was it. So as long as no, I'm cut off.
Transfer the mic. He's got that up. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.